Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Masks Off. I'm Kim, and I'm so happy that you're here today. And I have a guest with me. She actually was a guest more than a year ago. So she's back for round two, and she is Debra May. And I'm so excited you're here today. Since you came on the last time, you and I have been cultivating this friendship. And I really, really do value and appreciate our friendship. And I'm so glad that we have stayed connected since the last time.
Oh, thank you, Kim. I am too. It has just been a great partnership. I love chatting with you, and I've learned so much from you and your podcast, and thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So as always, we begin with a quote, and this quote was shared with me just recently from Debra, and I loved it. I'd never heard it before. We're not sure who the author is, so it's unknown, but the quote or the saying is, "New level, new devil." Very short, but so freaking profound. I have been there many, many times. So before we jump into a great conversation, why don't you share with the audience a little bit again about who you are in case someone new is listening that didn't listen back when you were on a year ago?
Well, thanks, Kim. I call myself a resiliency and reinvention mentor. And just to keep it very short, I feel like I help women get out of their own way. That's what I needed. I needed a way to get out of my own way and honor and, reflect upon all of my past experiences, whether negative or positive, and see them in a different way. So allow them to propel me into the future I'm looking for versus, getting down and getting in my head. So, that's where the resiliency and the reinvention, stepping into that next level you, is what I like to say.
And I know that you have recently gone through a 2-3 week experience that has helped you to be able to step back and have some perspective on your life. So do you want to share that with us?
I would love to. Well, my daughter just got married in California. I live in the Midwest. And after the wedding, I stayed in her apartment for almost 3 weeks while she was on her honeymoon and took care of her cat.
Mm.
The whole time I was there, first of all, I had the excitement of the wedding. And then I felt like I was looking at my life from a different perspective. And the crazy thing about it is when I got home, I felt this amazing clarity. It was like clarity of where I am, clarity of purpose, clarity of just what I want to do going forward. And I was home and I was thinking, there's got to be a different way that women can create this clarity in their lives without having to leave. And that's really what I wanted to talk about today, because the feeling is just, you come home and you feel like you can do anything. You're not stuck in your own head anymore. And that's where I'm at.
Yeah. I love that. Well, first of all, when you said that feeling of you can do anything. So I share a lot in my bio and in my story that I can remember when I was 8 years old and I was at the playground and I so desperately wanted to be able to do a front flip off of the monkey bars. And so I kept trying and trying and trying, and so normally when you're on the monkey bars, you just go from one rung to the next, right? And you just kind of climb across. But no, I had to get up on top of the monkey bars and then just like kind of lay across it and flip over and land. And once I finally did that, I had that super woman powerful feeling like I could do anything in the world. And then, I always tell the story, like, then life happened, right? Then there was conditioning from society. And then there was conditioning from my caregivers. And then I won't go too far into the story, but when I started to develop during puberty, I really developed quickly. I had big boobs and, put on a lot of weight, and I changed like drastically overnight. And I was so ostracized for it. And it just it chipped away and weared away at my self-worth and my self-being. And self-worth. Yes, self-worth. And so, and then just that continued, where just I started putting on one mask after another, people pleasing, perfecting, performing to protect myself from being made fun of or being put down in other ways. So when those kinds of things happen, we lose sight of what our purpose is, what our passion is. Life becomes very unclear. And especially if you fall into these patterns and roles and you live from patterns, it's very hard to see clearly what you're talking about, that clarity of purpose and passion. So I think it's beautiful that you want to share with us right now. How can one do that? Because I'm sure there are many women out there that are struggling and just going through the day to day and what is on the hamster wheel? What is my life? What am I supposed to be doing in this life? So I can't wait to hear what you have to share so that, we women, people who don't have the opportunity or the luxury to leave for 3 weeks. I can too, right? Like sometimes I can just go off and for the weekend or something. My kids are grown and it's a little bit easier now, but how about a woman or a person who's still raising a family and it's really hard to leave the home to go and maybe go to the mountaintop and get that kind of thing. How can they do it? Share with us, Deb.
Well, first of all, Kim, your story resonates so strongly with me. And I think that everyone has a story similar, different experiences, but the same feeling.
Yeah.
Life happened and, we started doing other things to make ourselves feel better.
Yeah.
Having kids, being, 2 careers in the home, and you're just so busy. To me, it was always that point of not having time for me.
Yeah.
And putting myself last and not understanding that the better I feel, the better things work. So it took me a while, and I had the same mask. I wore the people pleaser mask. I wore the perfectionist mask, which I still fight against all the time. I'm not going to be very honest about that. And then, finding this, and my kids are out of the house too, so it's a different day. But I think what I was looking at is that realizing while I was gone how stuck I was in my head. I was so stuck for a little while because, most women or most people, we're in this daily routine. We're doing the same thing. We're taking care of the same people or, whatever needs to be taken care of. We're talking to the same people for the most part. And so how do you get off that daily wheel and not stay in your head? And to me, it was about creating a new experience. So I think one of the ways that I thought, without getting out, without leaving home, because not everybody has that opportunity, especially for that long, is just start talking to a coach or a mentor. And when I was thinking about the changes coaches and mentors have made in my own life for me to share my story, and maybe not even share it with them and teach me how to write out my story. So I start seeing things from a completely different perspective. It's one thing to talk with a friend and share what's on your mind and share the difficulties or, where you're feeling insecure. But are we always that honest with the other women in our lives? Or, how many times have I told a story to a good friend and then afterward thought, maybe I shouldn't have shared so much. So to find someone, I feel like so many women don't have that person who they can talk to, like a coach or a mentor who can dig down and help you to figure out, not they don't figure it out, help you to figure out, what is the sticky point that I'm stuck on here? What are the stories that I'm telling myself that really not true, and I'm a victim of that as much as anyone else. And talking to other people, just like this last year when we've been talking a lot, it opens you up to such different perspectives. It opens you up to new ideas, to seeing things within yourself that maybe you hadn't seen before. And I think what it comes down to is understanding that it's up to you to figure out, how can I move forward and really take that radical step, take that leap of faith of talking to someone, joining a new group, taking a different workout, doing a different workout, excuse me, reading a new type of novel, getting involved with people and places in your life that you don't do on a regular basis. And for me, that has opened up so much.
I love that you're saying that. I have so many thoughts. I got to stay clear one at a time. So, one of the things that I learned from Marissa Peer in the hypnosis training is that our brains are wired for doing the same old, like what is familiar, because that's safe, right? So back in the tribal days, they took the same routes, the same paths, because if they went the wrong way, one, they might not get back to like the tents. Two, let's say grizzly bear would be around the corner or whatever, the lion. And three, maybe there wasn't any food. So they had to kind of like do the same path, right? To stay safe. So we do the same thing over and over and over again because it's familiar and it's safe. And so for the perfectionist, one of the hallmark characteristics is fear to step outside his or her comfort zone because of that fear. It's the same wiring that if I go out, the lion's going to get me. If I go out and do a new workout routine or I go join a new group, the lion's going to be there to get me. When really what we're just more afraid of is being rejected and not accepted. So that is so profound that you're offering that as a way of doing it differently. And it does give you a new perspective. It does make your world it does make your world more expansive when you can broaden your perspective in that way. So I guess the question would be, okay, there's a step. Now, what if someone says, what if that woman is too afraid to do something different? What if she's really stuck in the fear? And then I guess you're saying still the way to help with that is to work with a coach that can help you through. What are you really afraid of?
I absolutely agree to everything you just said. And I kind of want to take it back a step because I had this opportunity to go away for 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks, whatever it was. And you know what? I was nervous. It sounds crazy, but I was, across the country, living in my daughter's apartment. It's been many, many years since I've lived in, a 30-year-old's apartment where, I wasn't familiar with things. I wasn't familiar with the area. Everything was new, including driving around LA in her car that I wasn't familiar with. And so while that might seem easier, there were steps that I took or things I put in place that would make it easier for me, because honestly, there were some times I was nervous.
Yeah.
And, for one thing, sounds kind of crazy, but I said to myself, I'm not going to go out at night because I don't want to drive in her garage and I'm not familiar with it. Well, a week in, I was completely comfortable. So if you can take that first step and make that first step a smaller step, knowing in your heart that if I take this small step, doors open. I mean, anytime you connect with different people, with different women, and you start seeing your life on a different perspective, and you start seeing from a different level, one of the things that happens in return is you start seeing more value in who you are. And when you start seeing your value, it makes it so much easier to take that next step. It's like you want to take some of that power that you get from connecting and give it back to you. And when I think of a first simple step of reaching out to a coach, reaching out to a mentor, who allows you to be you. I think for me, it's ideal where somebody, when you're meeting people who allow you to be you. When you meet new people, you can be whoever you want to be. You can share the story and the perspective that's been holding you back or making you feel tight or scared or upset. And you start seeing things so differently by making these tiny changes. And I think what I really want to share with you is tiny changes, tiny steps lead to huge differences and make you feel so much better.
Yeah. That is awesome. So I want to go back for a moment to the story of being on the monkey bars, I was scared every time I wanted to try to do that. Like I had to do it multiple times before I actually could. And I was really scared. However, once I did it, the power that I felt was huge. And that's what you're saying, is that you might be scared to take these tiny steps or to step outside your comfort zone and to, call a coach or hire a coach. But when you do, the feeling that you get when you do step outside your comfort zone, whether the outcome is exactly what you want or not, if you can take the lessons in it, that feeling of self-empowerment is like none other.
I would have to agree. And, if I had to think of the tiniest steps from somebody who was nervous to make a radical change in your life, anytime you shift your routine, and I mean, go to a new grocery store, do something you are not used to doing to open up your world, to see how much more is out there. If I may, I'll share a quick story that I did with my daughter. She was a senior in high school, or she was going to be a senior in high school. And her boyfriend had broken up with her. She had just come home from a hard experience at camp, and she was feeling very down on herself. And she was at this point in her life where she was almost nervous to start school because I could feel that her self-esteem was so low. Yep. And the crazy thing happened. My sister lives in Arizona. So I called my sister and I said, I'm bringing my daughter for the weekend. Is that okay? And what I did with her is we climbed to a top of a mountain and we looked over, and what I wanted to show her is how small your hometown, how small your class is, how much more of the world there is to experience. And again, I mean, she came out from the experience kind of saying, you're right, Mommy, thank you. But when I think of another woman trying to take a step, the idea of taking a step back and looking at your life, looking at your schedule, your daily routine, the same people over and over, how small that is. And any way that you can try to make larger, meet more people by the smallest step, the smallest change makes a huge difference. And by having her see physically, I can't tell you how dramatic the outcome was.
So first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing that story. I'm so inspired by it. And, this is Masks Off. So it's about being vulnerable, being honest, and being real. It's not about showing up perfectly. And I want to say thank you for sharing that, because lately I have been in this place of where I have been making my world small. In some ways, I've been making my world smaller and smaller and smaller. And, part of it feels almost a little bit, like genetic or generational, in the sense that my dad was like that, especially he was always like that, always by himself, and made his world really, really small. And one of the things that I felt near the end of his life after my mom died was how sad it felt to me that his world was so small. And it actually scares me to be in that place. And one of the things that I don't want to do or have is in my elder years to have my world be that small. So I think it's a really great reminder. And it's a great story that you just shared. Like, I think we've talked about many, many valuable things so far in this podcast, but for me, that one is just so profound. So thank you so much for sharing that.
I want to share one more with you, and it kind of came up when you were talking about your dad, because we've talked in the past how I always feel the same way. When I was in LA, one of my daughter's friend's mothers, who's since become a friend of mine, called me and asked me to go to a play with her and her husband. And my first initial response, at first I said, "Oh, thank you so much. I don't think so." I turned him down and I hung up the phone thinking, why did I do that? Because I felt insecure, because I felt scared, because, are they going to like me? Am I going to fit in? Am I going to say the right thing? And so I really want to share this story of vulnerability because everyone has it. And, I called her right back and I said, "Kathy, of course I want to come. Can I, of course I'd love to come." And I ended up having a great time. But it was that fear, it was that vulnerability, it was that perfectionist mask that you talk about that really held me back and made me say no. And then I said, when I came home, I had this unexpected great time, that made me feel so incredible.
The universe rewarded you. And I too, every time that I do take that leap and that step and I go and I, go with someone or do someone, I always feel good after. It's just getting past that initial vulnerability that you just mentioned, that initial fear or insecurity of, how will I fit in? What will I say? Or I won't have I can talk myself out of doing so many things. I can give myself a million reasons to not do something new or different. This has been like profound. Is there anything else that you want to share before we wrap up?
I think that the last thing I want to say is that it's your responsibility to make sure that you're not staying in your head. And if I could share with other women that we all go through it, you're not alone. Everybody goes through those periods of vulnerability. And just by connecting and leaving your little tiny comfort zone can change the way you feel about yourself, which changes the outcome, which uplifts your family, which uplifts everyone around you. So the benefits of stepping out, of hitting that vulnerability head on, of basically getting out of your own way and allowing yourself to grow, just is what makes all of the difference. And if I could, going forward, remember, because sometimes we just have to remember that we're starting to get stuck in our own head, that it's just about moving forward that little tiny bit.
Yeah, I love it. And again, I'm so inspired. Now, I probably will still stay in on the nights that my Nets are on TV. I will still stay in and watch basketball on TV, but I promise you on the other nights, I'm going to do something different. So they're not playing the next 3 nights, and I'm going to really do something different so that I'm not just sitting in and watching TV at night, because that's what shrinks my world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So I do still have the rapid fire questions, 5 of them.
Great.
Okay. What is your favorite food?
I always make the worst answer for this because I eat tons of vegetables. Yep. Roasted vegetables are always my favorite food, and I make tons and I eat a ton. So
Me too.
I wish it was more exciting than that.
That's what I eat every night, so I get it. If you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go?
That is a great question. I love to learn new things and see new places, but I think my favorite places are hot beaches, Aruba, Cabo, and
Yeah.
I'd love to go back. Yeah.
Mm. What is your favorite way to take care of yourself?
I love to work out. That's not so much the practice of working out, but the feeling I get afterwards. So the best way I take care of myself is by moving my body, and it always gives me energy.
Great. Name one book that changed your life.
Oh, this one's gonna right now. So I'm only going to tell you what I'm reading right now because I think every book is changing my life. I'm reading Cues. Oh, and I'm not going to be able to remember her name. She's she helps you to see cues in other people, and allows you to share with them on a different level because you see how they're responding. And boy, what a bad answer because I can't remember her name. But will you put it in the notes when I
Yes,
get?
I can put it in the show notes. Absolutely.
Excellent.
Okay. And then do you have one tip or takeaway for the listeners?
My tip is to remember that every detour leads to something better. So when you're in a sticky point of your life, you can just take a deep breath, feel grateful because you knowing on the other side is something's going to open up, something's coming into your world. And when I learned to start saying thank you when I was triggered versus blowing up, my world changed. Saying thank you in my head, not to whoever triggered me, but just breathe in the trigger, knowing on the other side, I'm going to learn something, I'm going to feel better. Something new is going to open up my life.
Great takeaway. So this has been super inspiring conversation. You have so much wisdom and so much depth to you. So I'm really grateful that you came back on for a second go around. I will have all of your information in the show notes, but just in case somebody's listening, what's the best way they can reach you?
They can always reach me on any of my social media channels, or my email is debmay98@gmail.com.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today. It was so much
Thank you,
fun.
Kim. This was so much fun. I loved it. Love talking with you. Appreciate it.
So thank you everybody for listening to another episode of Masks Off. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode and what you heard today, I would love if you subscribed or liked, and I will see you next time on Masks Off.